So I have many a time professed myself to be a right-leaning libertarian. I dislike large government. I believe personal responsibility is important. We do see a purpose for tradition in maintaining our society and way of living within the Western world. However, due to my dislike of large government, I also find the concept of marijuana, for that matter, all drugs being illegal, to be asinine and very anti-liberty, very anti-personal choice, and more importantly, it dissolves personal responsibility. But I could discuss this all day in the general sense, so I'll use a video on libertarianism as a way to structure my arguments and my beliefs so I don't end up rambling on and on.
In the US, we seem to only talk about two political parties. Don't like taxes? Republican. Want more social programs? Democrat. But the fact is, there are a ton of political philosophies and affiliations out there. One of these is libertarianism, and it has grown increasingly popular over the past few elections.
As of the 2016 elections, the Libertarian Party had a total of 3.2% of the popular vote, which would probably command a bit of a chuckle, but considering the Libertarian Party only had 0.99% of the popular vote in 2012, they experienced a growth of over 300%, which some would say is a clear indication of massive growth. However, I do have issues with Gary Johnson, but that's a topic for another time. So when she says the Libertarian Party has grown more popular over the last few elections, she isn't incorrect.
So what exactly is libertarianism? Well, the most well-known version is the one that grew out of the 1960s counterculture movement in the US. In short, the libertarian philosophy says that everybody should have absolute freedom to live their lives how they see fit, as long as they respect everybody else's right to do the same.
While she does reference the person who popularized the term libertarian, Murray Rothbard, not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I prefer the more structured version that can be found here, or even on their own website, which you will see here. Despite the stipulation that I do indeed see a purpose for government. However, the idea of limited government and personal responsibility shouldn't be an issue to most. It should be an issue when it is presented, but it is looked at with some disdain in regards to issues on personal levels for some, which is to be expected. But once again, the concept of I do what I do, you do what you do, as long as we don't harm each other, is the mentality that makes me align with the Libertarian Party for the most part. However, there have been some things proposed by the Libertarian Party that I disagree with, hence why I don't fully subscribe myself to the ideal. One of these issues is immigration, as you can see here, and I'll explain my issues with this. While I have no issue whatsoever with immigration, I do not feel it is a responsibility or healthy for the nation as a whole to let in immigrants simply based on them simply being peaceful. While trade is important, trade can work without a need for immigration, and one of the duties of government I believe in wholeheartedly is the defense of the citizens, and a border that is maintained and laws that are enforced are important for the defense of said citizens. After all, let's say, for example, we open the border on the south end of the U.S., immigrants pour in, whether or not we have work available for them. However, if the welfare state was abolished, they may not have incentive to come here to begin with. But that is a big however and a topic for another time.
This generally means that most libertarians advocate for minimalist government on the basis that it should have no say whatsoever in the decisions a person makes about his or her personal life. This is a pretty Republican-leaning ideal. At the same time, libertarians stress social freedoms like the right to gay marriage and abortion. In a nutshell, libertarianism appeals to people because it combines both political worlds. That may be why the Libertarian Party has been called the third largest party by both membership and popular vote in the US. But libertarianism is unique in its own way. It tends to support what is called a night watchman state, where the only function of a government is to protect its citizens from being injured or defrauded. Thus, government should only consist of a military, a police force, and a court system. Additionally, some libertarians think agencies like the FDA are intrusive because they try to regulate what you can and cannot ingest. Safety laws like seatbelt or helmet requirements are also considered to be violations of freedom. Libertarians also tend to lean towards drug legalization, getting rid of welfare, and supporting gun rights.
Once again, she is correct on a majority of these accounts, although there should be a stipulation added that some libertarians support abortion outright, while some have their own boundaries on when it is feasible, and others just don't agree with it for religious or personal beliefs. And personally, mine come down to personal responsibility, which is the reason why I don't believe in it wholeheartedly. However, like I said, I do believe in there being stipulations as to when it is feasible. Now, getting into that too much, let's look at the FDA. While I do believe the FDA to be an example of an overinflation of the government, I do believe that that there must be some form of sanitation standards, whether they be regulated by the federal government or, as I'd prefer, by state government, is a topic for another time, and one that I'm not very well versed in. So I don't have all the answers, and, well, quite frankly, I never claimed to. But in regards to the final three she mentions, I do agree with all three of these points. Drug legalization, because the amount of money we spend on inmates who repeat the cycle over and over and over is preposterous. Also, once again, personal freedoms and personal liberty and self-responsibility. I believe in eliminating the welfare state, or at least severely limiting it, because it has gotten out of hand and has been taken advantage of. And I believe in gun rights, excluding felons and those with severe mental health issues, because in order for the people to remain sovereign, they must remain armed. Once again, that is a topic I go in depth at another time if need be.
However, some tenets of libertarianism have glaring problems in the real world. One real-world example of limited government and a free market occurred in post-communist Russia. Without government support, Russia's roads and banks collapsed, inflation skyrocketed, and many old and jobless people were left helpless.
Now, to close this out, and I do realize this is not really a response video so much as it is just me discussing my views, I will actually argue a point here. Now, she references post-USSR Russia, communism essentially taking control with the Bolsheviks in 1917 after the October Revolution, and inevitably falling, as communist regimes do, in December of 1991, officially, when the hammer and sickle was replaced with the tricolor flag we know of now, and Gorbachev giving up his presidency to Yeltsin. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. But, notice he's referencing to right after the communist regime ended and it was handed off to Yeltsin. So here's the thing. The nation had already been racked with economic troubles before communism officially ended. After all, the concept of food lines wasn't just a running gag about Soviet Russia. It was a reality. As were the poor living standards and KGB raids of political dissidents and an overall shutdown of free speech if you spoke out against the government. However, the reality is the state of Russia at the time she is referring to was spelled out long before that time. And simply saying, well, here is an example where it doesn't work is inaccurate because, well, it wasn't libertarianism. Unless, at least in a sense that we can quantify, because as far as we knew, censorship still happened. However, that would just about do it for this video, and I apologize in advance again for this not being up to my usual standards of response videos, and really wasn't much of a response. But, however, I am having a hard time finding videos that I can respond to without feeling like I'm plucking low-hanging fruit. With that said, I will see you all Thursday with a new video, and maybe Wednesday with a surprise. Anyway, if you like this video and my content in general and feel compelled to do so, leave a like and subscribe. And have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and or evening, you glorious cunts.